Welcome back, Barry, and
Thank you.
thank you for an amazing film. I first want to say that we are very honored to screen this film and to have you here with us. We're big fans of your work in general, and also for its contribution to Jewish culture. In fact, we've tried throughout the years to give you our annual Freedom of Expression Award, so I'm very happy to finally meet you.
Thank you.
So, in terms of the film, I love that you're telling us in the first 3 minutes of the film many of the themes of Harry's life. I want to start at the beginning. The opening shot is of the older Harry at the beach in Georgia, 1963. It's a very beautiful image of his shadow. And then another shadow comes and takes his hand. Can you talk about the significance of that shot and why you began the film with this?
Um, well, I mean, it's a good question. It's based on the fact that uh, which we will come to learn much later in the film, that he's about to go see this person that we don't know any of the details. I don't know if the audience has seen any of this, or
They will have seen the film. They will have seen the
they
film.
will. Okay, so all right, so I didn't want to confuse someone if they hadn't seen it. So, in other words, it's a pivotal moment. He's about to go to see uh, the girl that he was in love with just prior to their capture, and so he's thinking back, and then there is his shadow, and then he's envisioning this shadow, and then all of a sudden the holding of a hand, and all of a sudden now we're back in Poland, and we see this person and the incident that caused uh, the throwing of the rock that she did, and just in that thing, and then all that followed from it. We thought it was I felt it was a way to, we're now telling the audience he's remembering back to something. We don't understand all the consequence, but that's allowing the audience to understand that something rather traumatic happened. So starting with sort of almost a romantic moment of a hand in shadow holding another hand, and then it takes us back in time.
Okay. Yeah, I also thought actually, and maybe I'm reading into this too much, but we're seeing a person that's very complex, and we're also seeing his shadow side a lot in the
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
So I just thought it was really appropriate to see that. The next shot I wanted to ask you about was in Coney Island, 1949, and Harry is punching himself while looking in the mirror. And this behavior seems to have many implications. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Again, because it's early in the movie, and it's just laying out that there's a behavior to this, and that he fights with himself in a way. He fights for in against his sense of guilt that he has to deal with, and he's about to go fight for real. And so there's this conflict in a way. It doesn't have to be, you're not going to articulate it, but the visual of it, that this is not just warming up to go have a fight, that this is a man who was continually fighting himself.
Yeah.
So in rather simplistic terms, it's sort of what it is, as opposed to for the audience when you're first watching, you go, what's wrong here? And then we're beginning to unfold the story, and which will take us on this journey.
Yeah, I thought it was an amazing scene because to me, like you said, there's a lot of survivor guilt, maybe self-flagellation,
Yeah,
toughening himself up. To me, it also, in a way, foreshadowed his relationship with his son, who he's trying to toughen up. Um, so I found it to be very powerful. Again, I watched on the second viewing is when it really hit me because I
mm,
had kind of, so to speak, because I kind of knew what was going to happen, and I thought it was a great great scene. Um, Maybe you could talk a little bit about the genesis of the film. Like, I know it's based on, I guess, Harry's son, Alan's
Alan wrote the
book.
book, and then it was adapted, yeah. And then
And
I
then,
got I
yeah,
got the screenplay.
how did you get involved in it? And tell us why.
Well, I mean, the script came to me, um, and the original script, and this kind of an odd thing, but one of the things that I was thinking about and hadn't thought about was in around 1948 and 1949. I was living with my parents and my grandparents in this kind of rather small house. And this man came to the door, and I remember him, and they open the door and he comes in, and it's my grandmother's brother. And I didn't know she had a brother. And then he was speaking in a language I didn't understand, and she's talking to him, etc. And as a 5-year-old, something, I think it was around 5, and I'm going, I don't understand any of this. I've never ever, I can't even imagine my grandmother having a brother. And so they spoke, and then he stayed with us for 2 weeks, and they put him in my bedroom on a cot at the other side of the room. And the first night I woke up because he was sort of like yelling in a language which I didn't understand, which and thrashing around in bed, and I thought, I don't know, is he sick? What as a kid you don't understand what you can't make sense out of it, and then he fall back asleep, and this would happen many nights. And the same thing, wake up, thrashing about, saying, yelling something, whatever, and then fall asleep again. And it went on for about 2 weeks, and then he moved out, and no one talked about him. Nothing was said, at least not in my presence, about anything. I have no idea about anything. He just now has moved on. He's going to get a job, and et cetera, et cetera. And that was it. And then you have to jump forward a bunch of years, and I'm sitting with my mother in the kitchen in the afternoon, and we're talking, and somehow she says Simca, and that was his name, and was in a concentration camp. And I'm not sure how we got to that, but she said that, and I said, what? And in the concentration camp, etc. And then she told me, and I'm thinking, oh, that must be why he's whatever's going on at night, the nightmares that he's having, and anyway, that's basically that. So when I was reading the piece, and I was thinking, well, that's what Harry is dealing with. Not that he's waking up every night and etc., but it is now sort of defined. We can say, well, it's post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's haunting him in his life, and he can't quite come to terms with it. And he yes, he survived, but he is yet to be able to find a way to really live, a life. And I thought, that was it was fascinating to me, because I only had that one picture of him in the middle of the night, and thinking that. And then I spoke to my sister, and she had contact with, he had 2 children. And my sister's, and when I was telling her the story, and she says, well, Simca had problems, throughout his life, according to so-and-so, the daughter. And I'm thinking, well, it's the same thing in a way. So that sort of engaged me to want to, get involved in it. And then of course the script evolved, from that. And then of course when we're going to make the movie, I went to Auschwitz, and we walked around and saw all that, because you want to absorb what in the world that must have been like, and even that you can never ever can get enough of that understanding, no matter what, because it's so frightening. And but collecting that, and then talking to some of the people who work there, the guides, and they would tell little anecdotes about things that they had heard, et cetera, et cetera. And then the piece began to continue to evolve.
So in the film, there's Harry's having nightmares. And was that in the script, or did you bring that from your experience with your uncle or your
Well, it's a good question because I can't remember now, because as opposed to normally you make a movie and then it'll come out. So, we finished this movie well over 2 years ago.
Mm,
And so with the pandemic and not being able to show it, and distributors can't see it, and it's such a long period of time. And so I can't remember all the details. I know that we did collect things that I would hear and would put into the script as time went on. Like there's a scene in talking to the reporter, and he tells about the story about a cap.
yes.
And when being in Auschwitz, someone had told me, one of the people who worked there was talking just about various things they had picked up in stories, that float around. And that particular thing, when he says about the cap and having it, etc., and basically surviving another day because he took a cap that another of the prisoners didn't have, couldn't find it, etc. And it's just the survival of it all, and then the sense of guilt that comes with it. Little teeny things that you hear as you go along, as you're trying to knit the piece together. So it's not just a plot that you want to get deeper than just the mechanics of the plot. So you want to get into the human behavior, and that's a story of survival. I found rather fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I thought that cap story was harrowing, very powerful. And actually, talking about the journalist character, which was played by Peter Skarsgård.
Yeah.
I was wondering if he was in some ways a stand-in for you, that character, because he says something, what is he? He says, nothing is black and white. That's the sweet spot of a true story. And it made me think of like, is that also true for you as the director?
It is for me in most of the things I do. There's always, it's never such perfect clarity to anything, just relationships in general, not nearly dealing with something of this weight and tragedy to it, but how do we react with one another, and et cetera. It's not like, well, I was right, that person was wrong. It's always more complicated than that, which I've always sort of found fascinating. And if the more that I can bring that to the screen characters, the more I feel its importance to be able to do that. And so that would apply to this as well as other pieces. But what happens is once you sort of get yourself involved and immersed into it, things just start bubbling up that you say, well, I think maybe this would be interesting. Maybe this would be interesting. Just adding to it. And so I can't remember in the course of whether I write it or whether somebody else, writes it, and then I keep playing with it as we go along. It's just, to me, it's just part of the process.
That's one very intense scene, the story of the cap. Another one I thought was the Kaddish scene in Auschwitz during the boxing ring. There's sort of almost a violent beauty to that scene, whereas his opponent, let's say, is begging him to kill him so the Nazis don't.
Right.
That was one of the strongest scenes for me. I'm wondering, what are your favorite scenes in the film? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that's hard to say, that was, that whole sequence there of him, of even walking to, back to, the barracks, and the sense of shame, and going in, and all that are inside, or seeing him come in, and he feels the contempt by some, etc. That scene, and playing the music uh, against it. I thought, had a certain, profound significance to that. Because you want to, you want, there are certain things that need to be in place to understand the behavior later on in the film. And so you'd say, well, why would he act like that? Well, these are the events, so affected him. And you want to be able to have those building blocks, but you don't always want to talk about it, because sometimes in movies, a lot of talking about this.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you just feel it. He's coming back, having, lived another day in the ring and survived, and the guilt of surviving in a way.
Mhm.
And going back to his barracks where he could feel, in a sense, what other people are thinking. And so, if you can find a way to express an emotion and without talking about it specifically and all the details of it at times, then I think the better for the film.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the casting, because it's such an amazing cast. And can you tell us about Ben Foster's transformation, how he changed his physical appearance from Auschwitz to the boxing scenes, and just general?
I mean, Ben, as it turned out, I'd used him, which was his first film when we did Liberty Heights, which is 20 years or so before. And he was a really talented kid. And I thought, he's one of those actors that I think is a real character actor, that he can transform himself, of which God knows he did in this film. But he lost 60 pounds to play the sequences in the camp.
Wow.
And so, and that's what we shot first. And then we shut down for him to gain that weight back for in the next sequence, and as we went along. I mean, so the commitment to that, at the same time, he had to train as well. And so, and he had a coach to work on the accents, and they picked some particular place, I can't remember offhand right now, of some area in Poland. So the accent would be very, very close to what the accent would have been in that region of it. So he's trying to absorb that as well. So his commitment to the film was quite amazing. What he had to go through physically, mentally, and just entering that world and the horrors that Harry Haft, saw and had to deal with.
Did you, was he like the person you had in mind when you were working on the script?
He was one of the very first names that I thought, well, I think he can handle this. This is going to be really quite an investment of time and physicality and everything that goes with it, and he certainly has the acting ability, but this is an amazing commitment in that regard.
Oh yeah, God, 60 pounds. Wow.
60 pounds. I mean, it was extraordinary. And I'm seeing him during this period of time while we were in pre-production, and the losing of the weight and being able to do that. And also it's exhausting, because he's got a box, he's got to do all these stuff. So he has to not only lose the weight, but he has to maintain a certain kind of stamina for that role as well.
But
So
it really follows what the concentration camp inmates had to go through too. I mean,
well, that's
he lost
that's
weight very quickly, I think.
and he made that commitment to want to step in and go down that road. And we had special people working with him, so he's not going to suddenly get ill by doing that. But it's a pretty awesome responsibility for him to take on.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what the most challenging aspects of production was, or what they were?
Well, there's a lot of logistics to it, but I think it's a commitment that you just want it to be as humanly credible as you can make it. You know, I mean, you don't want it, you want it to stand on its own terms of a man struggling with his past and the present. You know, struggling with, you know, in a marriage and trying and loving somebody and not being able to really love the person, struggling with a son that he feels he doesn't want to share those things that happened, as so many apparently survivors did with their you know, their offspring, that a lot of them didn't want to talk about any of that. And of course, as a child, you're beginning to wonder what's going on, you know, what's wrong with the, you know,
Right.
father. And so you want to find as much honesty as you can possibly bring to the piece, and still find a way to engage an audience and still have them, you know, captivated by these people and the struggle and ultimately, I guess the arc of finding, you know, some kind of peace and contentment and love in the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an obligation that you work on to be as honest as you can to the work, and try to be able to do it. And at the same time, you don't want to feel as if you're overstating something. So you want to minimize some of the dialogue about some of those issues, you know, because they don't come easy to just let me explain to you. It's not that simple.
Right. And I think you feel it more when when it's not explained, but you actually experience it watching it. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I love that joke he tells Miriam at the beach.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was purposeful, but it's also another reference to a cap, but completely different. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, the you know, oddly enough, we did. I saw Ben the other day. We were doing an interview, and he reminded me of that moment, because uh, that's also not in the script. And what happened was they basically sit down on the beach and then they sort of, you know, hold hands, and that was sort of, you know, the ending to it. And
Mhm.
we were just about to start shooting, and Ben had mentioned, because I literally forgot, because you just sort of you know, ideas come to you and you say, let's try this, and I said to him, to Vicky and Ben, I said, Ben, why don't you tell the, you know, the joke with the cap? Because I had told it a few times during the movie, because I always found it such uh, a, a joke that's funny, but it deals with God and all of those things, and a certain kind of Jewish humor that is so specifically, you know, Jewish, you know, humor.
Totally. Totally.
And I thought, why don't we try the joke? You know, you can't talk to her at the end because there's nothing to be said, but we want to find this kind of moment that they could share together. And so I thought, why don't we just tell this joke at the very end? And he said, really, you want to do it? I said, yeah, let's just try it out. And so we did. They did that, and that's in the film. That's the way it ends.
Yeah,
But I thought it said a lot. It said a lot about relationships. It said a lot about, like, you know, Jews and the relationship to God. You know, it had all those things in there, and without trying to explain any of it. So just
Mhm.
let it be. And the fact that she could laugh, in a sense, is like the warmest moment, I think, between the two of them. That finally, it's like it's the breakthrough that he's finally is able to come to certain peace. You know, and so I thought that, you know, that might have some relevance, and you know, I could always have, you know, cut it out, but it ultimately stuck.
Yeah, no, I thought it was wonderful. You also had this ending of singing "God Bless America" in Yiddish.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
The you know what happens is, if you've got a script and and as you continue to go, there are things that sometimes I always think, like this, the world we've entered, sometimes it talks to you, and that was one of the cases where I'm thinking, well, look, if we've seen her as a singer, to sing. And I said that it might be interesting on the wedding, rather than doing just all the things that we have seen in terms of wedding, is that she sings, and the gratitude of, in a sense of coming to America. And so God Bless America, written by Irving Berlin, a Jewish person writing it. And I thought, but I don't want to do it as an American, in English in a sense, because then it's too specific. And so I thought that if, and she is a rabbi and all of those things to it. And so I thought, well, let's, at casting her, and why not just have her sing God Bless America in Yiddish? And we know what it's about, but it's these people finally coming here, in a sense, finding some kind of, peace and acceptance. And I thought that could be, could work in the context of what we're doing, especially if it's done in Yiddish. And so that it was that immigration to America for those people who survived, that came over, and others all from, war-torn Europe, could be an effective moment.
I thought it was very moving. I don't think, personally, in English, it would have felt kind of tacky a little bit. Yiddish,
absolutely.
In Yiddish, it was beautiful, because they're holding on to, their culture, but they're also embracing where they are. So
Exactly.
it says a
Exactly.
lot. So
not having to, you don't have to talk about it. It's just, you get, okay, I got that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I wasn't sure there was a better way to show what we know, in a sense, throughout the movie, what so many people went through. And then the fact that they found in coming to America, and they have a sense of freedom, et cetera, and they're not having to, again, not have to say the words as is in English, I think had a little bit more power to it.
Yes. Well, Barry, I think that's a good note to end on. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And
Thank you.
Look forward to what's next in your career.
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so.
All right.
Nice talking with you.
Same here. Thank you.
Okay.